Who doesn't love a good demolition? There's something mesmerizing about watching an enormous building bulge, crumble, and collapse under the weight of good old-fashioned dynamite. Demolitions are some of the most dramatic spectacles in the world of engineering, colossal structures reduced to rubble in a matter of seconds. Sure, a small demolition can be fun to watch, but this is one area where size most definitely matters. The bigger, the better. And these are the biggest demolitions to ever take place. Few demolitions are as iconic or as memorable as the day Seattle's Kingdome went boom. The massive domed stadium was a centerpiece of the city for decades, hosting everything from the Seattle Seahawks football games to Seattle Mariners baseball and countless concerts. But by the late 1990s, the Kingdome had outlived its usefulness. Structural issues and the demand for more modern facilities sealed its fate. On March 26, 2000, the Kingdome was brought down in a controlled demolition that made history. We're talking about a 25,000-ton concrete dome reduced to rubble in under 20 seconds. At the time, it was the largest implosion of a single complete structure ever attempted. Pulling this off was no small feat. Engineers drilled 5,905 carefully placed holes into the stadium's concrete walls, loading them with over 2 tons of explosives and 34.8 kilometers or 21.6 miles of detonation cord. The process took 4 months of meticulous planning and preparation. Precision was everything. The Kingdome sat in the heart of a bustling urban area surrounded by buildings, businesses, and a brand new football stadium. A single mistake could have caused catastrophic damage. When the explosives were detonated, the Kingdome collapsed inward in a spectacular cloud of dust and debris, landing perfectly within its designated footprint. The implosion was so powerful that it briefly registered as an earthquake on local seismographs, and in a regenerative twist, the rubble was recycled, with much of the concrete repurposed for local construction projects. In a way, the Kingdome continues to live on as part of Seattle's infrastructure. The demolition of the Pruitt-Igoe housing complex is infamous not just for its scale, but also for what it symbolized. Built in the 1950s, this massive housing project in St. Louis was initially celebrated as a beacon of progress. With 33 high-rise buildings and 2,870 individual units, it was designed to provide affordable housing for thousands of residents. However, reality quickly set in. The apartments were cramped with no balconies, and the buildings featured skip-stop elevators that only stopped on the 1st, 4th, 7th, and 10th floors, forcing many residents to rely on stairs. Poor planning, combined with a lack of maintenance and rising crime rates, turned Pruitt-Igoe into a nightmare by the late 1960s. For the 10,000 people living there, it had become a symbol of urban decay. By the early 1970s, the complex was deemed uninhabitable, and the decision was made to demolish it. On March 16, 1972, the first of the high-rises was brought down in a controlled demolition. The iconic images of the towers collapsing into rubble became a stark representation of the failure of post-war urban housing policies. Over the next few years, the remaining 32 buildings were demolished, erasing Pruitt-Igoe from the landscape. But the story didn't end there. The demolition sparked a national conversation about urban planning, public housing, and the social dynamics of American cities. Today, the site is studied in architecture and urban planning courses as a cautionary tale of what happens when ambitious projects lack sustainable policies to support them. One building might not have made the list, but the demolition of 33 high-rises over 4 years cemented Pruitt-Igoe as one of the most significant demolitions in history, transforming not just the physical landscape, but the conversation around urban living. The demolition of the Mina Plaza towers is a modern marvel of precision and scale. These 4 unfinished skyscrapers in Abu Dhabi were initially planned as luxury residential towers, but years of halted construction left them as hollow shells looming over the city skyline. In 2020, the decision was made to bring them down, resulting in a breathtaking spectacle. The Mina Plaza Tower's demolition broke records, earning the title of the tallest building demolition in history. Some of the towers stood over 100 meters or 500 feet tall, and all 4 were reduced to rubble in just 10 seconds. This feat required cutting-edge engineering and careful planning to ensure the demolition was controlled and safe, especially given the scale of the towers. The successful implosion was a testament to how modern demolition techniques combined precision and sheer power to reshape cityscapes in seconds. And here's where things get really impressive. Over 8 tons of explosives were strategically placed throughout the Mina Plaza towers to create a flawless collapse. Engineers meticulously planned the detonation sequence so the towers would fall inward, staying within their designated footprint. Despite the sheer size of the structures, the operation was so precise that no damage occurred to the surrounding area. The landmark tower in Fort Worth, Texas, was once the tallest building in the city, standing at 115 meters or 380 feet. Originally built in 1957, it symbolized Fort Worth's booming post-war economy. But by the early 2000s, the tower had become an outdated eyesore, no longer suitable for modern use. In 2006, after years of debate, the decision was made to demolish the tower. The demolition became one of the largest in Texas history, requiring over 300 pounds of explosives to bring down the massive structure. The entire operation was a masterclass in controlled demolition. The team behind the project carefully mapped out the detonation sequence, ensuring the tower would collapse inward, protecting nearby buildings from damage. When the explosives were triggered, the landmark tower crumbled into a pile of rubble within seconds, a dramatic conclusion to what was once a proud feature of Fort Worth's skyline. But the significance of this demolition went beyond the visual spectacle. Like many of the demolitions in today's video, it marked a shift in urban development as cities prioritized replacing older, inefficient structures with modern, sustainable buildings. Kowloon Walled City was a place unlike any other, a densely packed urban settlement that became infamous for its chaotic, unregulated existence. At its peak, over 30,000 people lived within its 6.4-acre area, making it one of the most overcrowded places on Earth. Now, to put that into perspective, it was about twice the size of Trafalgar Square in London, or slightly smaller than the Lincoln Memorial Reflecting Pool in Washington, D.C. An insanely small place for over 30,000 people to live. Originally a military outpost, the walled city evolved into a maze of illegally constructed buildings with homes and businesses stacked on top of each other and connected by narrow alleyways and hidden corridors. It was a city within a city, operating with little to no oversight from the Hong Kong government. The settlement included 350 individual buildings, most of which were 10 to 14 stories tall, housing 8,500 businesses and 10,700 households. By the early 1990s, the Hong Kong government decided enough was enough. The walled city had become a health and safety nightmare, and its demolition was deemed necessary to improve the quality of life for its residents. In 1993, eviction orders were issued, but many residents resisted, grimly holding on to their homes. By 1994, however, the area was fully abandoned, and the systematic dismantling of the Kowloon walled city began. Unlike the dramatic implosions we often associate with demolitions, the dismantling of the walled city was a slow and methodical process. Crews worked carefully to bring down the structures piece by piece, ensuring the safety of nearby neighborhoods. Over the course of a year, the walled city was erased. In its place, the Kowloon Walled City Park was created, a peaceful green space that stands in stark contrast to the chaos that once defined the area. The AFE Tower in Frankfurt, once a centerpiece of Goethe University's Barkenheim campus, stood as a striking example of modernist architecture for nearly 40 years. At 116 meters or 380 feet tall, this concrete behemoth was an imposing presence on the city skyline. Its demolition in 2014 marked the end of an era and was a feat of engineering precision that captivated onlookers. As Goethe University relocated to a new campus, the AFE Tower was no longer needed and had become outdated for modern academic purposes. Its removal was carefully planned, involving nearly a ton of explosives placed at key structural points. On the day of the demolition, thousands of spectators gathered to witness the iconic tower's final moments. The building collapsed into a pile of rubble in seconds, exactly as planned, with minimal disruption to the surrounding area. The site where the AFE Tower once stood is now part of a vibrant redevelopment project reflecting Frankfurt's forward-thinking approach to urban planning. The K25 building in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, was one of the largest and most significant structures of the Manhattan Project during World War II. Built in 1943, this massive U-shaped facility covered 44 acres and stretched over half a mile in length, making it the largest building in the world under one roof. Time. K25 was built to produce enriched uranium for atomic weapons using a process called gaseous diffusion. Thousands of workers operated the facility during the war, and it played a critical role in the development of the atomic bomb. After the war, K25 continued to contribute to US nuclear programs, remaining operational until its closure in 1987. Demolishing a structure of this size and historical significance was no small task. The project began in 2008 and required extensive planning to safely manage the hazardous materials left behind from decades of uranium enrichment. Crews worked in sections, meticulously decontaminating and dismantling the building piece by piece. This included safely handling contaminated equipment, building materials, and residual radioactive substances. By 2013, the demolition of K25 was complete, marking the end of an era for Oak Ridge. The project generated approximately 740,000 tons of debris, much of which was disposed of in approved facilities, while uncontaminated materials were recycled in adherence with environmental standards. The removal of K25 was part of a broader effort to clean up the Oak Ridge Reservation, ensuring safety for the surrounding community while preserving its history through archival documentation and exhibits. While the building no longer stands, its legacy as a critical piece of the Manhattan Project endures. The De Beers diamond mining complex in Kimberley, South Africa, was at the heart of the diamond rush that shaped the country's history. For over a century, it was one of the world's largest and most productive diamond mining operations, with the famous, or infamous, Big Hole as its centerpiece. By the early 2000s, mining operations had ceased, and the surrounding industrial complex had become obsolete. In 2005, the decision was made to demolish the aging structures to make way for redevelopment. This wasn't just about tearing down buildings. It was about reclaiming the land. The demolition project involved carefully dismantling processing plants, conveyor belts, and other infrastructure while minimizing environmental impact. It was one of the largest industrial demolitions in South African history, marking a major step toward land restoration and sustainable development. Today, the site has been transformed into a museum and tourist attraction, preserving the history of Kimberley's diamond rush. Meanwhile, De Beers has shifted its land-devouring practices to other parts of the world. Ever seen pictures of giant gaping holes in pristine landscapes that look straight out of an apocalypse? Well, there's a good chance that that's a De Beers mine. And while we're talking about building demolitions here, it's worth noting that this company has been demolishing the natural world since 1888. Thank you, De Beers. Allegedly. The Zhuan-Yang Viaduct in Hubei Province, China, was an impressive infrastructure project spanning over 4 kilometers or 2.5 miles in length. Originally constructed in 1996, it served as a vital connection along the Suyu Expressway, facilitating transportation across the Yangtze River and supporting regional economic growth. At the time of its construction, it was considered a significant engineering achievement. By the 2010s, however, the viaduct was no longer adequate for modern traffic demands. Increased vehicle loads and advances in bridge engineering rendered the structure outdated. To maintain the route's functionality, the decision was made to demolish the viaduct and replace it with a more advanced and durable design. Given its size and location over the Yangtze River, the demolition was a highly complex operation. Crews used controlled explosives and precision calculations to bring the massive structure down safely without damaging the surrounding environment or disrupting river traffic. Over 4,000 explosive charges were strategically placed along key points of the bridge, targeting its supports and deck to ensure a controlled collapse. The demolition of the viaduct, completed in 2016, was executed flawlessly. The structure fell as planned, with debris carefully managed to prevent river contamination. Cleanup efforts were swift, and materials from the viaduct were salvaged wherever possible for reuse or recycling. This successful demolition cleared the way for the construction of a modern bridge, better equipped to meet the region's growing transportation needs. Power Station Westerholt, once a towering symbol of industrial strength in Germany's Ruhr region, is now remembered for one of the most impressive demolitions in recent history. Built in the 1960s, this coal-fired power plant played a critical role in Germany's energy production for decades. But as the country transitioned toward greener, more sustainable energy sources, Westerholt was decommissioned, leaving its iconic structures as relics of the bygone era. The demolition of this massive facility was no small feat. At its heart stood a 337-meter or 1,100-foot tall chimney, one of the tallest structures in the region, along with colossal boilers and cooling towers. Bringing them down required months of meticulous planning to ensure efficiency and environmental safety. Engineers combined explosives and mechanical dismantling techniques to safely remove these structures without causing harm to nearby communities or ecosystems. On December 3, 2006, the enormous chimney, standing just slightly shorter than the Empire State Building, was brought down in a spectacular display, making it the tallest structure ever demolished in one go. What sets this demolition apart is the transformation that followed. Westerholt wasn't simply erased from the map, it was reborn. The site is being redeveloped into a vibrant mixed-use area that includes renewable energy projects, commercial spaces, and green corridors. This new development serves as a model for sustainable urban renewal, turning a former coal-powered landmark into a hub for innovation and progress.